Good Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to the Blue Water Climate Control Volquest.com podcast presented by our good friends at Blue Water Climate Control. Check them out online at bluewaterclimatecontrol.com. Give them a buzz at 865-299-2290. That's Blue Water Climate Control. Remember, they're going to take care of whatever need you have, whether it's a repair, whether you need a new system, whether you need your system just evaluated and checked out. They're going to take care of you. You can read all the reviews and see what they're all about. And it's pretty simple. Unlike other companies who try to fix things, they fix it the right way the first time with the right people. That's Blue Water Climate Control. Mention Volquest, and they'll take care of you as well as a form of appreciation to all the Volquest listeners out there who have been so supportive of Blue Water Climate Control. So be sure to check them out at bluewaterclimatecontrol.com. With Austin Price, and glad to have along with us on this Tuesday edition of the podcast, Ben McKee. Rob Lewis is off with his family, spending some time enjoying a little getaway, and Ben is hopping on with us here to talk some Tennessee baseball, some Tennessee football recruiting, plenty of other stuff to get in the world of college athletics as well. Let's start with recruiting, Austin. Tennessee takes a commitment on Monday from a guy everybody had on the top of their board, right, AP?
Oh, Hubs.
No, I'm not knocking the kid. I mean, and that's I'm leading in that way for a particular reason.
Well, at the end of the day, like there's going to be I'm not saying that this kid's a all world player, but nobody knows. I mean, he's played 1 year of football, did enough in that 1 year on the field to get offered by BYU, get offered by Maryland, to get offered by Tennessee, a few other schools. So, obviously he's done enough to be at least, showing some promise. What can he do when he comes to camp, at this, handful of schools? How does that change things? Does he go camp? I know he's planning on coming up to Tennessee next month, but does he go camp anywhere else? That's what I'm kind of interested to see, because he's the kind of player size-wise that could end up getting more and more traction. You saw that, last year with a handful of prospects. I think, the last 2 years you've seen, because of COVID, things just dramatically change for a lot of kids. And there'll be kids all over college football the next few years that end up playing at smaller levels that maybe probably would have ended up somewhere bigger out of the gate, but because of the fact they couldn't visit, they couldn't camp, all that stuff, they kind of stayed hidden. And because of the one-time transfer rule, they'll end up moving on up to something better pretty quick. But, on the whole, I think that, I said a Volquester text me on Monday, why would they take this kid? They could have got this kid in January. And my response is because, like, let's say you don't take him, and a month from now he camps, and all of a sudden, boom, 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 more offers. All of a sudden, then you're in a bigger fight. And if you over recruit him and you get to January and you got better players on the line, you can always move on. I mean, like, to me, like, this is you don't lose by taking this kid right now. I really don't believe that.
Well, I mean, Brian Grant, 6'7", 6'8", 275 pounds with some athletic ability. He's raw as can be. I think we all understand that. But, and Ben, I want to jump on here as well. When you look at this Tennessee offense and you try to project next year, the year after, as you're doing recruiting, you're trying to project a couple of years down the line, you always got to take a quarterback. So let's take quarterback out of the equation. When you look at positions of need on offense, is offensive tackle is it not at the top of the list in terms of needs for Josh Heupel's program for the next couple of years?
Absolutely, especially when you want to pair somebody who is going to protect Taven Jackson's blind side. That's of the utmost importance. It's why you see tackles drafted so high in the NFL draft every year. I don't even know that it's just roster specific with Tennessee because they have so many holes. I just think it's important for any program to make sure that they have the future of the tackle position in their program locked down. And the position is kind of blurry as it is right now, given the upcoming season, much less the upcoming seasons in 2022 and beyond. So I think it's a real nice pickup for Tennessee in the sense of you're getting in on him early, as Austin alluded to. You don't want to try to fight from behind if some other big schools come in and offer. So I think it's a nice pickup and an important one because the position, you don't really know what you have moving forward after this year. You have Dane Davis, but outside of that, do you move Darnell Wright back over to left tackle? So it's definitely a position of need, and I'll be curious to see how many offensive tackles Tennessee tries to bring in this cycle, just to try and make sure that that position is locked down and not something they have to worry about when you're bringing in a top quarterback like Taven Jackson.
Well, to me, the biggest thing, the thing we're not even talking about here, you're taking 4 or 5 offensive
Right. That's
linemen.
where I was going.
So I mean,
next.
like, you're not going to take. Tennessee is in no position as a program that they're going to land, 5 blue chip players. Now they may land a couple of really good players on the offensive line. They're in on a few, okay, but they're not going to land every guy. So why, if you're going to take if you're going to take a project or a kind of a raw kid, like, this one don't hurt you. Now, with the rest of your spots, you need to be a factor for Mo Clipper. You need to be a factor for Addison Nichols. At the end of the day, this recruiting class, I said this on the board when I was trying to debate T. Campbell 44. This class, once Tennessee made the decision, they went down with the investigation and changing administrations and changing coaches and all that. This recruiting class was never going to be phenomenal, just because, like, the cloud that's over the program. And you've got to find a way to land the guys that you're in the mix heavily for, like Cam Miller, or you have natural ties to, like Addison Nichols. Like, you add those type of players, and those are rivals 250, top guys. Then all of a sudden, you start marrying them with some other solid players that you feel like you can coach up and develop. Then this recruiting class isn't as bad as everybody wants to let on.
Well, and I think when you talk specifically about the offensive line, Mo Clipper, which is obviously one for Tennessee to have to. I mean, that I'm not saying they're going to get him. I'm not saying it's an utter pipe dream. He's been on campus, but look, that's a dogfight, right? Addison Nichols, you've got ties to. We'll see what happens with Fisher Anderson. I don't think that's the layup some people want to think that it is, because he's an in-state player. And then they make the final 5 for Brubaker. Okay, so that's some pretty good guys on the wish list. I mean, Brubaker is a big-time player. Clipper and Addison Nichols are all blue chip guys, and then you throw in Fisher Anderson, right?
Yeah, I mean, Clipper's the lowest ranked of the 4, and he's got Alabama and several other big-time offers. When you look at, Fisher Anderson's a top 250 guy. So is Nichols. Nichols is top 150, and so is Brubaker. I mean, like, Tennessee's in on some really solid offensive linemen. Are they going to get them all? No. But if you get 2, let's say you get 2 to go along with, Brian Grant, there's 3 tackles, because most of those guys are tackles. I mean, Fisher Anderson's a tackle, Brubaker's a tackle, Addison Nichols is a tackle. Then you add a couple of guards. It's 3 tackles. You add a guard and a center, or 2 guards with one that can play center. Like, that offensive line haul's not that bad. So again, the notion that Tennessee can just recruit as if they're this tradition-rich blue blood is not true. Like, it just doesn't work that way. Like, Tennessee ain't the cool school for the kids. Like, so much of recruiting is being the cool school. And right now, like, what if I can honestly say, if I was a kid, I'd really have. I mean, even being a guy that went to Tennessee, I'd have real reservations about things, because things you don't know. You don't know. These kids don't know. These parents don't know. And right now they don't. They're hearing from all these other schools is Tennessee's going to get hammered, this and that, and so in Tennessee saying, well, we're not sure what we're going to get, but we don't think it's going to be that bad. But you can't specifically say what it's going to be. So if you're one of those players or those parents, are you letting your kid, or are you making the decision for yourself to go to a school that can't accurately tell you what the next 4 years is going to hold? Is it going to be a 1-year bowl ban, 3-year bowl ban? What's it going to be? I mean, like, no one knows. And so, until Tennessee can get an answer on that, it's going to continue to get used against them.
Ben, you've talked to a bunch of recruits. How would you describe what they think of Tennessee at this point, and how big is the NCAA stuff, you think, out there that's hanging out there?
I think it's pretty significant. I've had 2 or 3 kids just flat out say that the NCAA stuff concerns them just because they don't know how it's going to affect them personally, and because of that, Tennessee is gonna have to take some chances on some guys. To Austin's point, Tennessee's not gonna be able to stockpile a class of 20 to 22, assuming that they leave some spots open for some transfers. Everybody's not gonna be a 4-star or a 5-star like some of these other established programs in the SEC that Tennessee is competing against, and it's a result of where Tennessee has fallen and where Tennessee is as Josh Heupel takes over with a NCAA investigation hanging over his head. He's going to have to go somewhat of the Rick Barnes route and find some diamonds in the rough and develop them. And once your Grant Williams or your Admiral Schofields and Jordan Bowdens, once they kind of show out and outplay their recruiting ranking, then Josh Heupel and Glenn Ellerby will be able to dip in and land those bigger names along the offensive line. And that's not to say that Tennessee's not going to bring in any prospects with bigger profiles. Also went through the names and mentioned the guys who have significant offers and are ranked much higher, but they're going to have to take some chances on some guys because they're just not in a spot to where they can just load up on a class full of 4 and 5 stars.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, go ahead,
Brent,
Austin.
look at it this way. Like Eric Kane, he talked to Ryan Bayer on Monday, and Ryan Bayer, according to Kane, and we'll have a story coming out here in the next couple of days, quote, says a lot of people are scared off by Tennessee and the potential punishments that are coming. But he says Tennessee doesn't shy away from it, and his interest is still very real in Tennessee. So, like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, all these kids talk. And so, well, are you being recruited by Tennessee? Yeah. Are you? Yeah. What do you think's going to happen? I don't know. Somebody said it was going to be really bad. Yeah, I heard that too. You don't think that has an effect on kids? I mean, I know for a fact it does. So, like, this whole notion again that Tennessee can just go out there and fly the flag and everybody goes, hey, it's 1998 or heck, 2008 for that matter. Like it's not that way anymore. Like it just is not. And so, there's more parity in college football on the whole. I get that the same 4 teams keep making the playoffs, but as far as like teams that traditionally don't win are more of a factor now as far as getting to 9 wins or 8 wins than they ever have been before. And so, like, you've got to find a way to make it cool. You've got to find a way to have some juice. And right now, Tennessee has done that to a degree, Brent, with the fact that like they've been able to pick up 5 high school kids commitments in the last month, starting with Elijah Herring. They've added a handful of transfers in the last month, including a quarterback. So, they've got a little more juice now than they did a month ago when it was really, really stale and stagnant. But at the same time, until they get an answer on all this, I think it's going to be really hard for them to get a lot of juice in recruiting because of the uncertainty.
Well, and I think that goes back to what you guys were saying too. I mean, the key to this class and the key really to the first couple of classes for Tennessee is going to center around their evaluation. They've got to evaluate better than some other schools and get in on some kids before they blow up, or get in on some kids that are under recruited, as Ben you were talking about with a Grant Williams and Schofield and those guys as well. They're guys that develop and become players who outperform their recruiting rankings. I think that's well stated. And I think you're absolutely right. We're seeing Tennessee be much more active in the 23 and 24 class. I mean, we saw Ben. We saw today. If you follow them on Twitter, I mean, Tennessee's throwing out quite a few offers. Clearly, they're going to be behind in the 22 class. We all knew that. They're trying to play catch up where they can, but they're clearly working really hard to try to not be, way behind in the 23, 24 class, as we've seen them out on the recruiting trail with quite a few offers. And I'm not saying they're not focused on 22, but they're trying to make a lot of hay in 23. It looks like.
As they should, and it seems like they're really trying to reach out into the states that border Tennessee. Seems like a lot of offers going out to the Carolinas and Georgia. A quarterback from Tuscaloosa was offered earlier this week, which I found pretty unique. So they're definitely trying to dive in and establish those relationships. Recruiting is all about relationships, and it's hurt Tennessee this recruiting cycle post Jeremy Pruitt with guys like Sam Horn. Where would Sam Horn be right now if Tennessee and this current coaching staff had several months up to a year to recruit him and develop a relationship with him? Maybe he's not committed to Missouri. So they have to get out and offer these scholarships, and they're doing it with the 2024 class as well, offering Boo Carter down in Chattanooga, an athlete earlier this week. So they're definitely trying to lay the groundwork as they should. They're so far behind the eight ball in so many different ways that it's critical that they try to make sure that they uncover every possible stone. That way they're not facing these same, walls in front of them these next two recruiting cycles, because they're already set back by the NCAA stuff, and anything further that can set them back, who knows what that would do for recruiting and trying to make up for the roster attrition that took place this offseason.
All right, Austin, you mentioned transfers earlier. I'm surprised that Tennessee has not done anything with a defensive back in the transfer portal. Is there going to be any more additions, whether it's a high school kid or a late signee from somewhere, or a transfer? Do you think Tennessee? I know you mentioned two potential names in the war room on Friday of potential defensive backs. I'm not saying they're definitely going to get one, but if there is another transfer, do you think that's where it falls into? Is it somebody in the secondary?
Well, the kid from SEMO went to Auburn, and the other kid, I'm not sure Tennessee's. I don't think Tennessee's decided to go down that road. But I do see him adding somebody, and I do see him adding somebody in the secondary. I would bet a lot of money on Tennessee adding someone in the secondary, probably sooner rather than later.
Feels like they just need a corner to me. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but it feels like they need a corner more than anything else. When you look at what potentially, I mean, if you're going to take another transfer, to me, that's the position of biggest need. I mean, I guess if an offensive tackle was out there, that you could go there, but I just don't think they've got enough depth at the corner position. Am I wrong here?
No, I agree with you. I don't think they're void of talent at the corner position. I just don't think they have any depth, and so I think that's why they'll likely look to add somebody in the not so distant future.
But you believe it's still pretty strongly that it's not going to be a 1-for-1 guy. If they take another guy, it's going to be a guy, somebody who has multiple years of eligibility left.
Yeah, that was like the kid from Southeast Missouri State or whatever from SEMO. He that was the problem with him. Like Tennessee liked him a lot, but he was a 1-for-1. He was going to be here for a matter of months, and Tennessee's already done that with Javonte Payton, and then Caleb Tremblay. So I don't think they really want to go that route. I think they'd like to have somebody that's going to be here for at least a couple of years, and can help the program a little bit more long term than just the kind of in the short term. So yeah, I think if Tennessee goes that route, it'll be somebody that can have 2-3 years left.
Well, we'll see what happens with that. Obviously, the current team, many of those guys are away, starting to trickle back into town and get ready to start things on June 1st. And of course, the recruiting cycle opens up on June 1st with camps and unofficial visits. And it's going to be really interesting to see how many guys Tennessee can get on campus in the month of June and a non-official visit capacity, and then how many official visits they elect to use as well. Speaking of the rest of this month and the month of June, Ben, Tennessee's hoping to be playing baseball for a while through into the month of June if things go well. Let's talk a little baseball here, and before we set the stage for the final weekend. I know you've had a couple podcasts, you've mentioned a couple times, but as you kind of reflected back on Sunday night and Monday, what do you take away from the weekend series against Arkansas from the Tennessee perspective? What's your big takeaway from that series?
That Tennessee can legitimately win a national championship. I know that may be extreme, but I think this weekend finally validated that to me. I had kind of been questioning Tennessee's top 5 ranking all season, not in the sense of whether they were a good baseball team or not. They're a great baseball team. They just don't have the talent of a 4th best team in the country or 5th best team in the country, but they just find ways to win, and they have enough talent, and you pair that talent with the will to win, and they just simply find a way to get the job done. Tennessee had no business nearly winning that series this weekend against number one Arkansas. I think Arkansas is the best team in the country. They hit the ball well. They pitch. They have arms out of the bullpen, the best reliever in college baseball, as we saw this weekend. And statistically, they're the best defense in the SEC. So they check all three boxes, and they have the coaching experience, Dave Van Horn, having done it before. So, and Connor Pavoloni put it pretty bluntly after the final game of the series that Tennessee had Arkansas on the ropes 3 straight days, had Arkansas worried 3 straight days. So I think we learned this weekend. I know it's a big takeaway, but I do think we learned this weekend that Tennessee is capable of competing with anybody and beating anybody in the country, as we've seen throughout the season. But I just think Arkansas was a little more validation for me personally now that we've seen them beat a number 2 Vandy, a number 1 Arkansas, and go toe to toe for 3 straight games. I mean, a couple breaks go Tennessee's way, and they win that series. So I think I learned this weekend that Tennessee can definitely win a national championship if the chips fall in their favor.
Is that validation? I mean, you knew this team was competitive. You knew this team, didn't fear much. They found ways to win. Is the validation more from what Will Heflin did on Saturday and what Tidwell did on Sunday to say, hey, you know what, this team's more than a really good Friday, a really effective Friday night starter in Chad Dallas, a really talented guy who's inconsistent on Sunday, and then a piecemeal kind of bullpen pitching deal on Saturday. Is it because of what they did with the starting pitching on Saturday and Sunday for you?
That's part of it. Blake Tidwell has really come on these last couple of weeks, and he delivered his best performance of the season on Sunday, especially when you look at the team that he was facing. Again, I think Arkansas has the best lineup in the SEC, and if you have the best of something in the SEC, then you probably have that best thing in the entire country as well. So I would put Arkansas starting lineup against anybody's starting lineup in the country, and Blake Tidwell absolutely dominated there in the middle innings. Did receive some help early in the game on that Jordan Beck throw to home plate that got the runner out. Tennessee had runners on second and third or Arkansas had runners on second and third until that double play. And then Evan Russell made that very nice catch along the bullpen wall to get Tennessee out of the second inning. But after that, Blake Tidwell really settled in and dominated those middle innings, and I believe retired 13 straight batters, set a career high with 8 strikeouts. So Blake Tidwell's really progressed here of late, and he has the stuff to be a first-round guy here after next season. He's a little older for his class, so he'll be draft eligible as a sophomore, and he won't pitch more than 2 years at Tennessee unless an injury pops up. And you really started to see him develop his off-speed stuff and his breaking ball to go along with that electric fastball, and it's really getting him through games. And so that's part of it, the pitching. But I also think you're starting to see some hitters that were expected to have a big season finally live up to those expectations. Max Ferguson was slumping at the beginning of the season, and the last 5 weeks he's been tremendous. Connor Pavoloni coming back from the wrist, it did not seem like he had really missed any games due to that injury. He came in and hit the ball hard in what felt like each of his at bats this weekend. So part of it's the progression of the offense as well. I think the offense coming along provides a pitching staff that depth concerns me, especially in postseason format. But it seems to me like the lineup is going to give that pitching staff a little bit more of a cushion as they go into postseason play.
They got enough in the bullpen?
That's my biggest concern.
Okay.
And for a weekend series, yes, but for an SEC tournament, when you're playing on a Wednesday, and that's if you get one of the top 4 seeds. If you don't get a top 4 seed, then you start on Tuesday, and if you win the whole thing, you're playing on Sunday. I don't think Tennessee has enough out of the bullpen to last them from Tuesday to Sunday or even Wednesday to Sunday, unless some guys really step up over the next week or so. And for a regional, if they lose that first game, I think you could see the depth with the bullpen really be a concern as well, and maybe bite them in the butt. Super regional, more of the traditional in-season series because it's 2 out of 3. But then you go back to the postseason format of having to play Lord knows how many games at the College World Series, and that's when I think the depth is really going to either show as a weakness, or you're going to see some guys step up. So it kind of depends on the weekend. With the current format of the regular season, I think they have enough to get through a 3-game series. But SEC tournament, NCAA tournament, when you're playing game after game after game, and you're having to rely on some arms that don't pitch near as much as they do in the postseason as they do in the regular season, that's when it gets concerning to me.
All right. So what we've learned is they can win the national championship, but they can't win the SEC championship.
Well, and that may be the case with the way the format falls. That may sound crazy to some people, but you don't go to Omaha and play 5 straight days, 4 straight days.
Omaha.
That's the, and that's the unique thing of the SEC tournament. The other unique thing is, you're talking about Tennessee can still win the SEC East. They said they could also be a 5th seed and not get that first day bye, Ben. I mean, that tells you
Leave
what
it
the
to Hubs. Leave it to Hubs to go Debbie Downer.
No.
I mean,
I started it, to be fair.
No, I'm just saying that's the level of competition you're dealing with in the SEC. I mean, you go get swept against South Carolina, and you might be playing that first night in the SEC tournament, right, Ben?
Mm-hmm.
Is that not right?
Yep. That's what it's looking like. No, you're spot on there. It's unlikely that Tennessee starts playing on that Tuesday, but it is a possibility. And South Carolina isn't a team to just overlook. They're a top 20, top 25 team. They're plenty capable of sweeping Tennessee. I don't think that will happen. It would surprise me if that happened, but South Carolina looked good this past weekend as they swept Kentucky. And if Tennessee doesn't bounce back and get over the mental hurdle, or not the mental hurdle, but get over what was such an emotional weekend this weekend against Arkansas, South Carolina could definitely beat them. So it's definitely a possibility, not a likely one, but a possibility. And to your point about the format, Brent, there's several SEC coaches who don't really play to win the SEC tournament because they don't want to sacrifice the NCAA tournament, the regional, the next weekend. They want to keep their pitching staff kind of the way that it is throughout the regular season and make sure that it's set up for the postseason. So you've seen comments from Tim Corbin, Dave Van Horn in the past to where they've just flat out said that they care more about winning the regional than the SEC tournament, and that's how they'll go about deploying their pitchers.
Yeah, well, and Tennessee's got plenty to play for coming up this weekend. Obviously, they still got an Eastern Division, top billing or Eastern Division title, if you will. Certainly playing for seeding in the SEC tournament. Continue to play for their, potential super regional. All of those things are out in front of this Tennessee baseball team coming up this weekend. As we wrap it up, I want to ask this question to you, Ben. You've covered that program for a couple of years, and I know you know some people in and around the program. But why has Tony Vitello been the right fit? Why has it worked at Tennessee? I mean, Tennessee tried it. They tried a bunch of different guys. I mean, I thought when Dave Serrano was hired, that was the home run hire because he knew Tennessee. Obviously, much like in recruiting and taking a Brian Grant, you hope that your recruit outplays his ranking. When you hire an assistant coach who's a head coach for the first time, you hope that he outplays kind of his growth on the job, so to speak. Why has Tony Vitello worked at Tennessee so well so quickly?
I think the two main things are that he's a grinder and that he's a recruiter in this league, and you're going to have the talent to not only compete but to win games. They've gone out and got Jordan Beck, who was a 14th round pick by the Boston Red Sox, a guy who has a good chance of being a top 3 round guy in his upcoming draft after his junior year. He was a guy that could have gone pretty much anywhere in the country, and Tony Vitello was able to pluck him out of North Alabama. They're able to go get Drew Gilbert, who decommitted from Oregon State the offseason after they win a national championship because of a coaching change. They're able to go get Drew Gilbert. They're able to go get Alric Solari over Arkansas out of JUCO, and Garrett Crochet. They're able to find Garrett Crochet, who was unrecruited out of Mississippi. Texas tried to get in late, but Tennessee was in there from the jump and was able to land him. So it's been recruiting and a grind that Tony Vitello talked about last week, that it's kind of been hard to come up for air at times. And he's wondered if he's had a life outside of baseball. But that was the only way that Tennessee was going to get to the point that it is now. because they were so far behind the 8 ball. And in a way, facilities wise, they're still behind the 8 ball, but they're able to overcome that because of the grind, and that's been now reflected in the players. They have a group of guys who just work all the time and put in a ton of effort and time into their craft, and it's reflective of the head man in charge. It truly starts from the top and kind of fizzles out through the bottom of that program, and they take on the personality of their head coach. So I would say that he's a grinder, he's a recruiter, and he's genuine as well. The Tony Vitello that you see fired up with Dave Van Horn after the game is the Tony Vitello that has attacked this Tennessee baseball program for the last 4 years. And on a lesser note, just the jokes that he likes to throw out during media availabilities, and just the person that he comes off as in front of the cameras, that's who he is behind the scenes. And the players and recruits and parents, everybody just loves him. So the fact that he's genuine, that he grinds, and that he's an ace recruiter, I think a mixture of those three things is why he's been able to get Tennessee baseball to this point.
Well, he could be the mayor of the city of Knoxville, Knox County, and he might have a chance to win, or get some votes to be the governor in the state of Tennessee, with where he's got this Tennessee baseball team at right now. South Carolina coming up this weekend. We'll have full preview of that. Of course, we'll have the Mailbag podcast coming up on Thursday as well. Plenty of recruiting coverage coming up throughout the week here at Volquest.com. That's going to do it for this Tuesday edition of the Blue Water Climate Control Volquest.com podcast. For Austin Price and Ben McKee, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, everybody.